joining us here. Some of you guys have been here for a few minutes. My name is Tucker Johnson. I have my co-host Liz Dunn Marcy here with me. Hi, Liz.
Hi, I'm
Yeah,
so excited to be here today.
yeah, we have a guest as usual. Liz is out there hunting down guests. So if that's something that you think you might be interested in the future, is being a guest on this little program that we do, make sure to reach out to Liz and let her know who we got
Yes.
today, Liz.
So I'm really excited. I think I had written in my LinkedIn blurb about this that Chris is one of my favorite people. So Chris Englund is joining us from Active Campaign. Chris, do you want to take a minute just to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hey, Liz and Tucker.
Hey.
Hey, my name is Chris Englund. I'm the Vice President of International Operations at Active Campaign. We're an 800 person tech company based in Chicago, although now globally. I'm based in Providence, Rhode Island, and I'm excited to be talking with you guys. I run a team that includes localization, and prior to AC, I also worked with someone that some of you may know, Natalie Kelly over at HubSpot,
Oh
where
yeah.
also started up localization as well. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, welcome, welcome. You mentioned active campaign. You have about 800 people. Where? You're a global first company or a global native company. Where are you guys all located? Outside
Yeah,
of Rhode Island,
uh,
of course.
I mean, just me in Rhode Island, to be fair.
Okay.
It's a small community of localizers here in this state. We are a very small state to begin with, but Rhode Island aside, man, it's hard to keep track, quite honestly, with you. I think at the beginning of at the beginning of all of this, we could say most of us were based in Chicago, with a smattering of folks in regional offices like Dublin and Sydney, as well as in Brazil. But now that we've gone into a full uh, distributed work environment, a couple of things have changed. I mean, the Dublin office is now 120 people out of that 800, and Brazil
Wow.
has grown, Sydney too. But then, a lot of us have kind of scattered. So, uh, sorry for the long story, Tucker, but like we join meetings every single day, like regular syncs, and it's a new story
Right.
of where people are currently living.
Right. Exactly. And with 2020, everybody's remote anyways, right? I mean, if you weren't a globally dispersed team going into 2020, coming out of 2020, I think there's a few companies that started to adopt remote work and started to really embrace that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Chris, didn't you move to Chicago for this role
Uh,
pre-pandemic?
yes, I had, and I'm sure it's something that a lot of the folks on this line could relate to. That when the distributed work thing came across, like when we all had to work from home, I feel like localization teams were all real ready for this. Like we were
Right.
already
Yeah.
a global team with folks in different places. We were already working with, partners, LSPs, folks working in region. So not to say we were excited about it, but man, among the teams at various companies, I heard a lot from localizers saying they were prepped and ready for this kind of work environment.
Yeah.
Yeah, Liz, I'd moved out to Chicago for Active Campaign, and then my sister was due with her third, and she
Aw.
lives here in Rhode Island, and so we didn't have much tying us down anymore. So headed back out east.
Well, I personally am happy to have you back as a fellow East Coaster here, and really happy to have you also make your Clubhouse debut with us. So thank you, Chris, for joining and for telling us a little bit about yourself. Just to kind of reset and introduce the room here, this is Loc Unleashed with Liz and Tuck. We do this every Monday, sometimes Tuesdays, I guess, depending on
Yeah.
when we kind of
When
shift
we get our shit
around.
together, basically.
But yeah, we're really happy to be here this week. I'm Liz Marcy. Just to introduce myself for those of you who don't know me, I work on the enterprise sales team at Translated. And like Chris, I am on the East Coast. I'm located in Connecticut, and I'm trying to help grow enterprise business and growth for Translated, which is headquartered in Rome. And Tucker, I think you probably are pretty well known at this point, but you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, I don't know. My name is Tucker Johnson, and I today am representing myself, I guess, but thankfully to Multilingual, we're able to stream this on Multilingual's streaming channels. I'm involved with Multilingual. I'm involved with a company called NIMSY Insights. We do market research and consulting, specialized in, but not necessarily exclusive to, the language services industry. I think I've been on a couple sales calls with you, Chris, probably trying to pitch my wares and services to you guys, but I think that might have been before Active Campaign. Do you remember that, Chris?
Yeah, I think I do, Tucker, but I also can't remember whether it was before or after.
I was desperately
Um,
trying to remember this last night, and I was like, all I
uh,
remember is it was super confusing because there were two Chris's, I think. Have you ever worked with another Chris?
um, Tucker, I feel like this industry is like an industry of a bunch of shapeshifters. We all keep like m moving places,
It's,
but like
yeah, I
it's
call
hard
it,
to remember.
it's a incestuous industry, to use a different descriptor, is what I
Okay.
say. Everybody's worked for everybody else. It's like growing up in a small town. It's like
It's
everybody's
true.
everybody's dated everybody else's sister, and that's just the way it
Yeah.
is. Welcome to localization.
Yeah. And Liz and I are actually, funny enough, from similar hometowns. We're pretty close from to each other. I grew up in a place called Old Saybrook, Connecticut, and Liz, I think you grew up nearby. Speaking of small
Yeah,
towns.
I'm in Guilford, so I'm only like 2 towns away from where you grew up and where your parents still are, right?
Eggs. Yeah, so talk about small world experiences
Yeah.
all the time here.
Well, we
It's
have.
actually it's pretty unusual with our industry. Everybody is so super global to meet somebody that's all
Hmm.
from this little area of Connecticut. So,
Yeah, how have you found that? With three, I'm just now realizing we got three Americans on the phone. How have you found that working in an international industry, coming from that small town background and going global and working with people from all over the world?
Um, Tucker, I learned some interesting fact recently about my new town, Providence, that it is on the basis of national origin, ethnic diversity, and racial diversity. It is the 14th most diverse community in the entire United States. So I kind of don't
Providence,
really
Rhode
feel
Island.
like yeah, it's a small town, but it's still pretty, yeah, it's still pretty global and international here. I mean, I think we could probably say that there's a story around growing up in a small, undiverse town, a small town in Connecticut that kind of propels certain people with some, curiosity for what life is kind of
yeah.
like outside.
Yeah, I think you can
I'm
meet.
sure Liz can relate.
Yeah, I'm from a small town too, so I think we can all relate. I think it goes one
Oh
way or the
yeah?
other. It either compels that natural curiosity, or you just get stuck and you just stay there forever.
Uh,
And thank God for folks like us. We didn't get stuck. We're out there, for better or worse, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I guess so.
exactly.
And how'd you end up
Well,
at Active Campaign? How long have you been there?
I've been I've been at Active Campaign for 2 years now, and hmm, if I have to tell that story in retrospect, I guess I would say by accident. I had a
Ugh.
friend working at Active Campaign. I had a recruiter call me. I'm giving you like the actual true story here. The recruiter called me and said, "Hey, we're hiring for a VP of product marketing.
Ooh, fancy.
We hear you could do that." I said, "Well, you might have heard wrong. That's not what I do." That's an interesting. I find it flattering, but it's not what I do. And so I explained to her what I did do, for fun, as you do with a recruiter when you're not looking for a job.
Right.
And
A
I
whole
do
different
this.
level of confidence when you're not actually looking for a job, right?
Yeah,
You start interviewing them.
it's a wonderful privilege of the pre-pandemic era, obviously for many, but it is a wonderful privilege. And so I just kind of explained it, and she said, "Well, as it would turn out." Oh, I said, and I just usually introduce what I do by a series of keywords. I say languages, countries, global offices, global expansion. Oh, yeah, really? She says, oh, sounds interesting. Did you know we're actually, um, yeah, 50% international? I was like, what? I had never even heard of Active Campaign. Well, we've made some progress since then, but like suffice to say, I mean, the long story short is her ears perked up like any good recruiter would, and saw an opportunity and introduced me to the CEO, to whom I explained just what is this like localization thing, and he was pretty eager to get some of that.
Get some of this.
Mhm.
I love it. I love it. That's awesome. And that, I mean, was that a big transition for you coming from HubSpot, which has a pretty mature localization program to kind of taking this one and running with it?
Um, yeah, I would say so. I think and I mean in some ways yes, in some ways no. I think that's one reason this industry, folks can move around is kind of what we do is pretty um hmm, it's a good question. I mean, a lot of what we do is kind of universal. Like we're really
Yeah,
interested in providing an awesome in-language experience to customers, regardless of where they are located. And I think that story would be the same whether you're doing localization at Lucid app, or you're doing localization at Slack or localization at HubSpot. I mean, it would be the same. Um, I think what's different is uh, localization is like very much an operational process. Like it's something I'm sure you guys can glom onto what I'm saying and maybe say it better, but like um,
I don't know about that, but
well, no,
I'll try
okay,
my best to
don't.
follow along.
Okay, don't no pressure for you. I'm the guest. The pressure's on me. I'm good.
no,
we're
no
we're
pressure
we're
here, Chris.
we're just slowly vendor side folks, so we'll try to keep
Uh-huh.
up with you.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, thank you. Okay, so I guess what I'm saying is like I had to adapt to the fact that it's a much smaller company,
Uh-huh.
one for which the appetite for routinized, repeatable, scalable
Right.
processes is not really the name of the game, because
Hmm.
like when you're earlier stage, what you're trying to do is grow at all costs. You're trying to get lots of customers. The idea of creating a 25-step workflow that brought together 20 different teams to get to get some new language launch is like going to cause a lot of eyes to glaze over at a smaller company, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's been a little bit of an adaptation there, and I think it's been interesting to me. In fact, I'd say like um, I really wish I knew what I knew now 2 years in, having started international operations at a smaller company, because I think I might have approached it a little differently out of the gate. So I guess it's I don't know, Liz. I guess my big company versus small company sort of experience
Hmm.
with this thing.
Yeah, that's great. It's got to be fun, being on both sides.
Yeah. And by the way, we got just really quick. I don't know if it's time for a reset of the room, but anyone that wants to come on up and join the conversation, ask questions. If you have some value to add or question about Chris, active campaign, localization, anything at all, come on up. We are very
Yeah,
inclusive here. So coming from a big company like HubSpot into, I see people struggle with this. I've never worked on the client side officially myself, but I see people struggle with this when they come from a big company with a ton of resources, let's say Apple or let's say Google. And maybe that was their introduction into this industry. That was like what they know. And then they go to a smaller company. And it's a struggle because the budget just ain't there, if you know what I'm saying. Um, and
Oh,
I'm talking to a lot
wh-
of companies recently about like how do you get more of that budget? And I'm curious, what are some of the ways that you find, replace the word budget with resources? I don't want to just talk
Right.
about money.
uh, yeah, Tucker. I mean,
Starting with
I
the
gotta
easy
say,
questions.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you're kind of zeroing in on what is my struggle these days, and um, I think as well, like it's a struggle of that's a new challenge for me because prior to this, I didn't have that problem. I just got the luxury of having the budget and deciding what to do with it because somebody else did that work for me, and that somebody else was Natalie Kelly.
Right.
So,
Not a bad person to learn from.
no, not at all. But now that's my job, and evidently it's hard. And so,
Evidently, it's hard.
yeah, I mean, it is. I don't know. I would open that question to everyone here, what they do to try to get this, budget and resources. I think it's like a global, a across the board company influence campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
different people in the organization are influenced differently by their own motivations and their own, interests in the org. And so I think being successful in this field, and I'm not saying I've been yet, but I imagine like a really, really successful person is able to go from one meeting with a VP of finance and talk about localization in the language of an accountant, and then go to another meeting and talk to the CTO about localization in the words of an engineer. And I think that's the path toward eventually clearing the way for your localization team to do the work that they know how to do and can do really, really well, provided they have those resources and budget.
There's a big storytelling component. I heard someone else say that. I did not just come up with that. Someone
Yeah.
gave a presentation. It's like if you want to lead a localization, you need to be a good storyteller,
Yeah.
and you need to be able to speak the language of your stakeholders, whether they're your financial stakeholders. They want to talk
Hmm.
about what is the ROI of this, right? If you're talking to your CEO leadership, C level type people, they want to know. Then you want to be talking in terms of the vision, the company's vision and strategy. And one of the challenges comes is not all companies have an international or global vision or strategy, right?
Right.
Hmm.
So it's kind of up to us, those people that are familiar with the industry, or with localization, to kind of hold their hand and lead them into that. And it makes me sad because why it's we shouldn't have to sell this shit. You know what I'm saying? Like this is good stuff. Hey, you want to take your product or
Tucker,
service and go
I
to
mean,
other? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, my job, I joke sometimes, and you say this is being broadcast on like hundreds of platforms. Is it being recorded as well before I say what I'm
I
going to
I
say?
well, I wouldn't say hundreds of platforms.
I can beep
Oh,
you
okay.
out so you can say whatever. So
Ooh, fancy.
Okay.
just
Well,
yeah, it is being recorded. So be careful. If you come up,
um,
anybody that goes for anyone in the audience too. If you come up on stage, we're recording this. So
Yeah.
well, I think that, okay, then I have to say it much more diplomatically in that case, Tucker.
here we
This
go.
isn't a safe space in that way, in
It's
that
not a safe
case.
space.
My
Sorry.
my
It's
job
it's
is the internet, after all. My job is also to explain to our jobs are to explain the rest of the world uh, to people who are unused to the rest of the world. I'll put it that way. And I
ah.
don't mean that out of a situation necessarily of arrogance or out of a situation or a situation of ignorance, but like something I'll say just quite fairly, especially to my American colleagues, is, you have to understand, like in our country, 3% of people are passport holders. Um,
Wow.
about 40%, about 40% of us do speak other languages, I think, in this. Well, wait a minute. Sorry, that was a global number. Scratch that thing. Okay, so, but in America, you have to like really try hard to get to another country. You have to try really hard to
And
think about
and,
another
and you're
country.
not American, right? You're Dutch. I just got a chat. This is me about
No,
doing
no,
this.
I am American.
Okay,
I'm from Old Saybrook, Connecticut,
okay, that's
Yeah.
what I
as
thought.
Liz knows.
I got a chat from somebody that's watching this saying he's not American, he's Dutch. Maybe I misunderstood. Okay,
Sure.
all right.
No, that
So
What?
could be.
go
But
America, go America.
okay, but like if you're standing on the face of the sun trying to see the rest of the universe, it's going to be really hard to see. And if you're in America, like it's really hard to relate to this concept that not everyone speaks English,
Right.
because your experience in the world has been every time you've traveled somewhere, if you have traveled, has been the rest of the world has spoken to you in English, right? Like it's understandable that people don't have this sense in this country that the rest of the world is preferring to do business in their own language, is more trusting of products and services from their own country, that they're more, and understandably so, skeptical of imported products and services, at least to the same degree that Americans would be as well. But in America, we're just the largest single language domestic free market in the world, such that a lot of the world's brands are ours. So we don't have to flip to the third section of a user manual to find our language instructions.
Yeah.
And most of the brands like Apple, it's from California. So when we talk about getting people engaged here, we're starting from a position of like maybe a little bit lower global literacy in the first place, and that's a really important place to start, I think. So I don't want to like talk down condescendingly to Americans by any stretch here, because I
I'll do it for you.
understand, right?
Don't worry.
Yeah, I
But
was
you
gonna say.
but we so but you know
No,
what
I
I
hear.
mean,
I
right? Like
do. I do. I started learning.
you,
I started learning Spanish when I was a junior in high school. That is way too
that's
late.
awesome.
That is. It is awesome, and I'm glad that I started learning it. Right.
It
But
is too late though. Yeah,
hmm
I agree with you.
But
yeah,
Tucker, your family could have taken you on a family vacation 1,000 miles away
it-
from home and still not encountered another culture or language. Whereas if you grew
exactly.
up in a place like, just to, throw the pin anywhere else in the world,
Hmm.
1,000 miles brings you into contact with a lot more cultural variation. So, so I mean, this is why it's like no surprise so much localization technology comes, to me at least, comes from places like that are highly multilingual, for instance, right?
Hmm.
Why we see like a center of localization in places like,
Like
Europe,
Luxembourg. Yeah.
like Luxembourg or Dublin.
Some random.
But
We
but
could.
Since
also why when you explain to
since
your like,
Chris is since Chris is not from Holland and I'm
yeah,
Oh,
Dutch speaking from Belgium, I
hi.
thought
Hi,
I thought I'd
Stefan.
throw in my
Close enough.
European/American perspective on this.
thank you, all, Stefan.
Bring it.
I should
Dunk.
believe.
All
Donkashade.
right. We're ready, Stefan.
This discussion that we're getting into right now always makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable because I'm a naturalized American. I'm very patriotic. I really love the United States. I also really like my heritage. I'm originally from Antwerp, Belgium, and I can see the perspective from both sides of the pond, so to speak. And I've always felt that part of the reason that we have this impression that the middle America um, citizen is not nearly as sophisticated as, say, the European citizen, I think has a lot to do with the dimensions of the country and the dimensions of the size of the United States.
Right.
When I grew up in Belgium, I literally could drive a half an hour and be in a different country. And so be speaking a different language. It's not very surprising that the focus in Europe is a lot more on speaking languages, and that I ended up speaking 4 languages. I don't think that there's a particular difference in sophistication of the citizen per se. It's just the result of the general lay of the land, so to speak. It's the reason why kids go and learn how to drive a car here much younger than in Europe,
Right.
because the dimensions are a lot smaller. This is just it has a lot less to do from my perspective with sophistication as with just the lay of the land, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Stefan, I think that's astute for sure. I don't think it is a sophistication either. I think it's what you're exposed to, what's neighboring.
Yeah, I'll come into your defense here, Chris. And as much as I like to joke about being a stupid American, I don't I get what you were trying to say. It has nothing to do with and to Stefan's point here, it has nothing to do with sophistication. It has nothing to do with base intelligence level or anything like that, and has everything to do with A, exposure, and B, necessity, right? Like if you're not exposed to it, then you're not going to understand it. Like I grew up in a household where literally like we'd go to Blockbuster Video and rent several videos for the weekend. We'd come home, and if one of them was Irish or if somebody had a British accent, we couldn't watch it because my folks couldn't understand it. Right, like that's kind of the
Yeah,
household that and that's okay because we could drive 6 hours in any direction and still be in California, not even still be in the U.S. Well, maybe not if we drove east, but you know what I'm saying. And the other one is just the necessity. It's like we don't need to learn another language for better or worse. Say what you will about that, but we took a family trip to Mexico growing up, and I learned how to barter, not how to speak Spanish. My grandma gave me $5 and said, "Go buy stuff," and taught me about bartering, which is a cultural concept that's pretty much foreign to most Americans. I don't know how I got off on this tangent. I'm sorry, Liz. Bring us back on track here. Just smack me around.
No, I love it. Why don't we take a minute and just reset the room? It looks
Yeah.
like we've got some new people that have joined us. So thank you so much to everybody who has tuned in. It's hard to believe we're already 30 minutes in here. But this is Loc Unleashed with Liz and Tuck, and we are talking to Chris Englund today, who is from Active Campaign and was formerly at HubSpot. And yeah, we are learning all about his background in localization and our growing up in Connecticut. But I'd love to invite people up to the stage to ask Chris a question or maybe chime in about anything we've been talking about. Please make time to follow the moderators and follow Chris as well. This is his debut on Clubhouse, so we're very happy to have him here and give him a follow. And yeah, so who wants to come up and ask a question today?
Yeah. And in the meantime, while we're waiting for people to come up, I want to take it back to what we were talking about earlier with, I think it was you, Chris, that referred to talking to your internal stakeholders is basically, I'm going to use my own words now, basically selling internally, basically how
Yeah.
this influence campaign internally. What are some of the tricks that you've learned, whether it be at HubSpot, whether you've learned or adopted an active campaign, that help bring awareness to the right parts of localization, if that makes sense?
It's a good
um,
question.
well, I'll let you know when I figured it out, Tucker.
Yeah, that's and
It's a
hey,
work in progress.
that is a fair answer. A lot of people are talking about that, right?
Mhm.
I've seen a different models work, and of course, you bring up Natalie over at HubSpot. They've got a whole system going on over there. I talk way too much about HubSpot, though. I don't want to talk about HubSpot today.
Okay,
um,
thanks.
thanks, right? Um, but I've seen organizations like here at Nimsy, we've actually helped organizations do this, like put together basically internal marketing campaigns for the localization, like complete with email
Interesting.
campaigns. Like, here's your monthly international digest, and these
Wow.
awareness campaigns are very powerful because most people don't know about the international nature of their own companies. And a lot of
Hmm.
people will be surprised. Like if they work for a publicly
Yes.
traded company and you go look at their publicly filed paperwork for the company, and it'll usually say how much, what percentage of revenue comes from international operations versus domestic. And a lot
Yeah.
of people are super surprised when they see that. They're like, holy crap, like I'm responsible for 70% of this company's revenue. And
Yeah.
that puts things in a new perspective. Yeah.
So I think that's it, Tucker, is like is simply letting people at the company know what is outside their immediate view
Yeah.
by talking about where the customers are, profiling them internally. We do that a lot. So we interview our international customers and we do write-ups. We connect our product managers with those customers and
Do you have separate profiles for the international folks, or do they fit within
yeah,
the domestic profiles?
they do. Well, sorry. So that no, we do separate ones. So we're trying to do like spotlights for AC active campaign customers around the world.
Mm.
We talk about them a heck of a lot. My favorite was one that my team member, our localization manager, Laura LaRusso, wrote recently, which was meeting Hans, who is a Dutch customer of Active Campaign, and kind of wrote up this awesome customer empathy piece that I have to say I've gotten so much mileage out of in talking to a variety of different people at the company because we might have some disputes as to like whether we spend a lot of money on this localized content or that localized content, but we don't dispute that Hans is a valued customer of ours, and we
Mm.
don't
Right.
dispute that we would want to make his an incredible customer experience. And so, really, like all we're trying to do on an international ops team is elevate his voice so that the rest of the company is taking action to, make his Dutch customer experience better. Um, like we're essentially translating for him into actual business actions what the international customer is asking of a company. Um, so that I mean that's one that's been pretty helpful. I think also building allies across the
Mm.
company and meeting
Right.
those allies um, where they are. So
Right.
it's hard to be general about this, but like our CMO is and our CEO are both really into the fact that Active Campaign is in a certain number of countries or has
Nice.
a certain percentage of customers. So you better believe I'm always telling them about the latest country.
Yeah.
So, oh, guess what language they speak? It's French again.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Well, and
actually, one of our recent customers was from French Polynesia. We specialize
Ooh.
in, we have a lot of different specialties, but one of them is like wellness coaches and personal guides. And this woman runs
Oh.
a independent consultancy online right out of Tahiti. All of her pictures looked gorgeous, and
Can
she's
we
an Active
can we
Campaign
please
customer.
I think we need to make a
Yeah.
visit to her.
yeah.
Correct, correct.
Oh
And
man,
and
that's
and
awesome.
honestly, Liz, that was exactly what everyone said as I brought her up.
Oh,
And
I'm
guess what?
sure.
Now they're going to think about her. And so my
Right.
my mission was accomplished there. They're going to think about how she does her marketing in French and how we really need those French characters to be supported for user-generated content. And also how none of our support hours overlap with her time zones. And they're going to think a little bit about her.
Right. Well, and that brings us back to the storytelling
Mm,
component that Tucker had mentioned. We're telling these stories so that they resonate and actually move things along. So that's very cool.
Yeah, you mentioned, and once again, everybody, inclusive stage, come on up, raise your hand. We will
I
bring you
know,
up. You can join
quiet
the
crowd
conversation,
today.
but that's fine because I got plenty of weird stuff to say. You mentioned allies, building allies internally, Chris.
Yes.
If you had to pick, like, who are the one or two people, like, if you had to make a recommendation to a new localization manager starting at a new company, perhaps around the same size as your guys' program over at Active Campaign,
Hmm.
who should they make friends with their first week? Like, who are
Oh,
the
good
best
question.
allies for localization managers or directors to align with?
Oh, well, that's hard for me to say, Tucker, because I'm kind of an extrovert, so I just make friends with
You're one
everyone.
of those. Okay.
I know. But if I had to like describe it to an introvert maybe, or somebody who's like gotta think this out step by step, I'd guess whoever gets excited about international. It's often your CMO, but it also could be your head of engineering. Maybe your head of
Yeah,
engineering really loves the localization challenge of making their software more scalable and robust. Maybe it's your CMO because she likes having some really awesome numbers to put in the boilerplate. Maybe it's your CEO because he's like super proud of how it's a global company. And it may not be all three at once. It may not be all four at once. And also, it might be a director of engineering who came to this country as an immigrant himself and had to teach himself English and speaks two or three other languages. And so he understands what it's like to have family who don't understand technology
right.
because of language barriers. So you kind of look for one of these things, and I just follow sort of path of least resistance, or at least where there seems to be some interest and appetite, because a vociferous, enthusiastic partner is definitely helpful to you as like a local person
Mm,
scaling your message. And then,
hmm.
that person will help you to reinterpret what you were saying to other people like them. So like,
Right.
I know enough to get involved with engineering, but like I don't know exactly the language engineers talk. So
Right.
you find someone that can help you bridge that just on the basis of interest.
They speak
Yeah.
binary. They just communicate in ones and zeros. I haven't
Fact,
been able to figure it
it's a
out.
truth. You've worked with engineers, I take it.
Yes, I have worked. Well, they worked, and I cried while they were
Yeah.
working. This is for, no, but it's true. Like the engineers develop. Well, first of all, engineers means different things in different companies. But
Yes.
the dev
Different
teams,
industries. Yeah.
yeah, the dev teams hold a lot of power. That's one of the things that you guys over at Translated focus on, right? Liz is talking to
Yeah.
the dev teams.
Yeah, it's a big focus, I think, industry wide for all of us now, just given the importance of, integrations and the platforms available and the technology available just to augment everybody. I
Mm.
think it's become very integral in furthering the conversation on all sides for sure. But we definitely focus on the technology on at Translated.
Yeah, I think one of the things, when we're talking about building allies or building connections, introvert or extrovert, like one of the
Yeah,
ways
that's a
I
great
like to look at
question.
it is, there's the people that I need to impress, and then there's the people I just need to appease, right?
Hmm.
So it's like, who do you want? This is usually what the conversation that I'll have with people on the client side if we're going down this route of like how to build trust with stakeholders, which is who do you need to appease and who do you need to impress? Because sometimes they're different. Sometimes you just need to say, okay, let's make these guys happy, and sometimes you need to look at it and say, no, let's make these guys thrilled because
Yeah.
they're going to buy into my vision and help me run with it. And that's one of the best things that you can get if you get a strong internal stakeholder who's going to help you with that. And it sounds like you guys over there have. I mean, your CEO is very excited about going into new markets. Does he actually, or he or she? I apologize, I don't know your CEO. Who sets that schedule for going into markets? Like, does the CEO come to you and say, "I want to go into Tahiti," or do they come to you and then you say, "Let's look at French Polynesia," or is that confidential?
Oh, I mean, I think practically it comes from a variety of different places. I like it to come out of a place of a person who is um, in control of revenue. So interestingly, I actually report to our SVP of sales, a guy named Adam Johnson,
Mhm.
and that's really uh, interesting, partly because sales and localization don't usually intersect, but in terms of subject matter. But in this case, it's been really helpful because what I do, what my team does, is essentially we're like the business platform to enable that global sales growth. So AJ basically says, look, we need to grow X percentage in this region. How do we do it? And then I've got colleagues, regional vice presidents that kind of say like, well, EMEA could probably account for this kind of growth. And we cascade on down from the pursuit of growing revenue.
Hmm.
But I think that makes what I do pretty valuable since
Sure.
it's like predicated on helping to grow in a particular market is what I'm saying. And so I did try actually early on. This is something I think I would have wished I had come to a conclusion earlier on. So maybe I could save some people grief in the future. I don't really think localization or international operations should be the market picker. I mean, I have some thoughts, right? I mean, a lot of us are very knowledgeable. I think we should be a highly supportive role and right at the seat of the table. But if the company doesn't have like a revenue problem or a customer retention problem or a customer delight problem, I don't think it's really. I think that puts localization in a place of being a hammer looking for a nail.
Hmm.
Oh, well, how about you consider Latin America? Well, we could consider Latin America, Chris, but actually sales are doing just great in the United States. Why would I consider that? Oh, well, you should consider it because it's a really interesting region. Well, you know what? As SVP of sales, I don't really care about interesting. I care about like revenue growth, right? So I guess he and I have worked really close together now for the whole time that I've been at Active Campaign. I prior reported to the CEO, but I think the cool thing or the cool point that I was able to bring or to go along with AJ for is just the very like fundamental need for regional revenue targets and regional goal setting. Because as long as we have
Interesting.
that, then everything we do, whether it is, oh, we need to open an office in that country, it's it's really dispassionate and it's only about, uh, what,
The
uh,
numbers,
oh,
right?
thank you. I lost
Which
my
is
train of
which
thought.
is what it should be, Frank. I mean, let's.
Yes.
I'm with you. That's what it should be. Like this isn't a charity. Like, well, unless you work for a charity, then it's a different conversation, right? But that's a very interesting way of looking at it, and I think we could cry a lot in this industry about like, oh, the loc team should have more say in which market selection, and sometimes it's a good fit, sometimes it's not though, because it's kind of like putting the fox in charge of the hen house, right? Like if it's my job to go into a bunch of
Yeah.
markets and my importance in the company is determined by how many markets that we're going into, eh, I'm going to recommend that we localize into some weird languages,
Like all markets. How
like
about
all of
that?
them,
Correct,
which
Tucker.
which
Yeah.
can be a good strategy. It can be a good
Well,
strategy, but it's not for every company. It depends upon who your customers are. It depends on who your product is, right?
exactly.
There's no, and it
Well, if
irritates
all
me.
of us want to start a company together,
Let's do it.
then I'm putting my money on Southeast Asia. I mean,
Hmm.
Yeah.
I have this map of the world in terms of like GDP growth per region. I'm gonna tell you, America does not have a very impressive number. Neither does anywhere in Europe. And so, yeah, I mean, if they asked me, I'd say let's start localizing into Khmer and
Oh
um,
no,
I'd
sorry. Yes,
I'd
Oh,
Khmer's good.
Tucker
well.
just got very
I'd say
excited.
I'd say Burmese, but as we learned from Facebook, that's an impossible language to
Oh yeah.
Wait, Burmese.
source.
There's a difference. Burmese and it's been a long time since I've worked. But Burmese and Khmer, what's the difference? They're different languages, or are they?
Burma and Cambodia, and I'm not
Okay.
actually clear, but like
Yeah, yeah,
on all the languages of the region, but like the tallest, not that this is a sign of everything, but like the tallest tower in all of East Asia is actually in Saigon right now, and we're all still tripping over ourselves for the last 20 years as to whether we should enter the Chinese market. And I just feel like East Asia, Southeast Asia is the place to be. Um,
yeah. Dip your toe in the
but
water before tackling China. Is that what you're saying? Or you're saying
yeah,
go in
well,
there plus
no,
China?
no, what I'm trying to paint a picture of some markets that tend to be a little bit frightening for companies to go into from the United States, at least at first, and try to say like, the problem with localization pushing these things is they would come to a conclusion based on some macroeconomic factors. And what you really need as well is you need the business perspective of where the current business capabilities to perform well as well. You also need the business to have like buy-in and say like this is a revenue goal that we need to hit, and understand that like business really does operate. Not that it isn't a charity, but more to the point like it's meant to be efficient in some way and to make money at its lowest cost.
Sure. Is
And
there is
so,
there a place though? I mean, I get that.
hmm?
I agree with that. I'm a capitalist, shameless about it. But is there a
Oh,
place
okay.
for culture, social justice,
Oh.
initiatives, causes? Is there a place for that in localization?
Well, yeah, I mean we're like this we're the sleeper cell for that within a capitalist. I want to say I'm not 100% capitalist myself,
I don't
and
think anybody is
uh,
100% capitalist. I don't think anybody is 100% anything these days. So,
Yeah, that's true.
when but we don't. Sadly, I don't get to work for the the European Commission DG of languages or anything like this. I don't get to like do language plurality, but I do get to influence business decisions on what is the ethical and right way to grow in a country, and the ethical and right way is like to hire locally, to native hire local leaders, native speakers to, um, offer the same value to those customers. And I just have to, I just frame that in terms of, the business outcome because I'm certain that it's there. Like when you, go right, like when you show up correctly, you're bound to do much better than if you show up kind of half-heartedly in a new region.
yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
but it's a challenge too, and I think like it is the limitation of capitalism right there is that um, capitalism doesn't necessarily have morals and ethics such as like um, Apple will not be releasing its iOS in minority languages for which there are no buyers. And so, as a consequence, in 100 years from now, there will be fewer and fewer, less and less language diversity. And that is a shame. Unfortunately, I don't think that we can expect businesses to be responsible for that.
Oh,
But
if
now we're
that's our
getting political
expectation,
here.
yeah, if that's our expectation,
Right.
we're all in for a sore surprise. If we're expecting businesses to
Yeah.
carry on
But
extinct languages or to revive extinct languages, I think we're asking the wrong people, right?
But it's hard for all of us because we probably got into this primarily because
Hmm.
we love languages and linguistic diversity.
Yep. That's
Yeah,
right.
it's challenging. It's challenging. Miss
But
Liz,
anyway,
we've got 8 minutes left.
Yeah, this has been quite a conversation. I can't believe we're almost out of time. Um, any last questions? Chris, anything that you want to share with us?
um, anything at all?
I
Um,
mean, within, well,
Yes.
it is, it is called Unleashed, so I guess, yeah.
Look, my big tip to everyone here that's trying to start up localization at a smaller company, or maybe even selling into a smaller company, looking at localization and growing internationally, it is to it is don't begin at the starting point of language. Start at the starting point of company goals and international
Mm.
growth ambitions, and talk the language of the local customer. Help that company to understand who their non-US customer is and to develop some empathy, because ultimately businesses are making decisions in in the furtherance of delighting and making those customers successful, renew, buy more. And so if you can kind of frame the localization question in terms of how this helps the company to grow in that market with that type of customers, more you can make that customer like real. I think that's just kind of been my path, and has been pretty helpful at Active Campaign. I'm really glad to have my colleagues on board with
Yeah,
that
and
vision.
you've got a great team working with you. I know that firsthand, so you're very lucky.
Thanks, Liz. We are lucky. Very thankful.
Yeah, and I think on the topic of focusing on the company goals and driving it from a strategic place, companies like Ninzy Insights, is they're invaluable. We
I'll shout out to
have
that.
engaged. Oh, I personally have engaged Nimsy just to try to help companies that maybe are lacking with that type of direction, that maybe don't know where to even start. So there are some great resources out there.
Yeah, we do a. Sorry, I don't want this to be an NIMSY sales pitch, but we do a lot of that work, and it's a lot of fun helping people do just what we talked about. Like, how do you build that rapport with people internally? How do you build the empathy between your end users and your C-suite? I don't want to turn this into a
Mhm.
pitch
Right.
for those services. So let's.
It would be a valuable service for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's fun. It's one of those things though that people don't often realize they need until they're like balls deep in it, right? It's like, oh my gosh, we have
Yeah.
this challenge that we need to.
Or until they're banging their head against the wall going, why
Right.
won't the CFO give me money? Why doesn't he
Exactly.
just why doesn't he get it? Does he not believe in the value of localization or
So,
international growth? And you know what? That's not it.
it's not it. It's not it. Yeah.
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 But yeah, if I
And that's
have,
where you
it's.
guys, I guess, would help.
I've talked to people before. It's like if I have to hear the words "more with less," these three
Oh
little
yeah.
words, "more with less," one more time from my C-suite. But we are out of time, unfortunately, today. So I'm gonna play us out here with the music. Chris, thank you, sir, for coming on. This has been a very delightful conversation. Um, I
For
wish
me
you.
as well. Thank you so much, Tucker and Liz.
Yeah, and for those listening
Yeah.
in the audience, we got Catherine, Gabriella, Momin, Catherine, again, Catherine Kostaki, Philip, Dario, Shaima, Allison, Anne Marie, Bridget, Julia, Rodrigo, Annalisa, Harry, and Annalisa. Wow, we need last names on this Clubhouse. But thank you guys all for joining. Next time, come on up, ask questions. Liz, any closing thoughts from your side?
No, just a quick thank you to Chris for joining and taking me up on my invitation. And I really appreciate this opportunity every week. So thank you guys for joining. Thank you, Chris, for speaking with us. And thank you, Tucker, for being my co-host with the most.
See you as well. All right, guys, we'll see you next week. Everybody have a great day.
All right, have a
Bye,
good
everyone.
week.